But first, let's tell you what this Bingo Notables is. This Bingo Notables is grocers, grocery store founders. And I kind of influenced this one a little bit with David because I tend to love grocery stores more than I love a clothes store or a shoe store. So I will definitely gravitate towards a grocery store. And we have Darren here because Darren, let's say the last 24 hours gave us this really awesome profile, which is great. And it's a global book with somebody in New Zealand, and that's great too to hear. But you have a special story with it, and it just touched my heart. So Darren's going to tell us that story a little bit towards the end of the show or the middle, because that's when we're going to talk more globally. But I did have a question for both David and Darren and everybody in the chat. If you have your one favorite grocery store, what is its name?
I was going to ask that same question.
So what is the name?
So while they're doing that, one of the challenges with this week's or this month's challenges, most grocery stores are not national or international. So depending on where you live, you may or may not have even heard some of these stores. And some of these chains that are huge, but they only cover Eastern United States or Western United States or Canada or whatever. So it's funny because I grew up on the East Coast, which is directly opposite. The West Coast, opposite where Sandy grew up. And I think the stores that she was familiar with, I'd never heard of. And I'm sure she hasn't heard of a lot of the stores that I just...
It was like opposite. Yeah, it was really kind of cool. As David's saying, the name of the stores, I was like, oh, yes, this, and oh, yes, this, and that.
Yeah, because when I went on the internet to find, biggest stores or chain, and I'm like, I haven't even heard of half these places, and yet they're the biggest stores in the country. So, but if they don't have them in my state or my community, because we have here in Dallas, we have Kroger, Tom Thumb, and we used to have Albertsons, but they've all left. And then we have a smaller chains. We've got Winco and some of the specialty stores like Whole Foods and Sprouts. But yeah, we only have two major ones right now: is Tom Thumb and Kroger. So anybody else that shops somewhere else, I very well may never have heard of it. Piggly Wiggly, for example. I've never seen a Piggly Wiggly.
No, just hold on. And Darren, what about you? What's the one grocery store that you buy most of your groceries from?
Well, I mostly buy it at a store called Peck and Save, but my favourite is the one that I first started at. Well, it's called Woolworths.
Woolworths?
Yeah, Woolworths.
Yeah, so you know what? I did a little research on Woolworths, and from what I tell, we used to have Woolworths in the United States.
Yeah, I used to see them.
But I don't think they're connected.
I don't think they are either. I've never seen really groceries at a Woolworths, except maybe a box of mac and cheese or something like that. But I used to sit at their counter and eat a grilled cheese and get a milkshake or a malt. Is that the similar over there?
Well, Woolworths it's mostly groceries here, but I went away for a bit, and then the convoluted company structures, and now we're getting Woolworths back. So it's taking over from a
different,
like the brand was Countdown, and now it's got to be Woolworths.
I agree. I've not heard that in a long time, and I can tell you, I'm going to date myself. David, please don't tell me what the date is when they left, but I will tell you that this was a thing that I did with my grandmother every weekend as we went to Woolworths.
It used to be huge, but it disappeared at some point.
So this is funny, and thank you, and I am thrilled to hear that Mel has shopped at Piggly Wiggly. So for me, I would probably say from growing up, and Chris mentioned it, is giant. Giant food stores are huge in the Mid-Atlantic. So growing up, that's the only one that we really went to, even though we had Safeways. And then when I went to college in Florida, it was Publix all the way. You cannot beat Publix fresh fruit. You know, it was just Publix all the way. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And in Georgia, we go camping a lot. We'll take our Airstream and we'll go camping quite a bit. And I can guarantee you, every time I see a Piggly Wiggly, my husband's driving the truck with the camper, he just knows. Just go in and go into the parking lot and let me go shop at Piggly Wiggly because I just love the store. It's very similar. I know a lot of people are saying Aldi, and it's very similar to Aldi. If you've never been into an Aldi, Aldi really just has, like, if you go in for corn, you're only going to find one brand of corn. As opposed to a grocery store, you might find, 5 or 6 brands of the same type of corn. So Piggly Wiggly's kind of like that. They'll probably only have like one brand and some brands, but they are like older stores for the most part. They're part of the Southern culture of the United States. And oddly enough, they have some other things in common. So let me share with you first this wonderful page that David always puts together. It's the Bingo Supermarket Founders. I did drop the link already in the chat, and I'll do it in a few minutes. I'll do it again. What I want to do first is drop the...
And let me say one thing in preference. This page is not yet complete. I've had several additional grocery stores that were brought to my attention that I've listed down below the table that I haven't, that I will insert into the table over the next couple of days. And then also we just put out late a request to our country projects to let us know about which stores were big in there. It was very difficult for me to figure out
which ones
through the internet what stores other countries actually use and don't use. So I have a list of some of them there that I'll add in. But there you can see the ones that we've listed but haven't gotten into the table yet.
And I love that you put the logos, as always, because when you do that, we might not recognize the names, but we do tend to recognize the logos.
Right. Usually I put the portrait of the individual, but you wouldn't recognize any of those people probably. So if you go to their pages, 95% have images of the founder. There are a couple that we couldn't find, but I think having the logos
really helps.
Sometimes I don't even I don't recognize the name, but then I see the logo and it's like, oh yeah, I remember. And some of these are defunct stores too. They were really big at one time, but they bought out. So here's a piece of trivia that in some ways is kind of sad in my mind, but right now, every major chain of grocery store is owned either by Kroger or Albertsons. Those are really the only two conglomerates, other than some specialty stores. And then, of course, Walmart is independent of that. Target would be. But in the United States, all of the major chains have been absorbed by either Kroger or Albertsons.
There's one, I can't remember the name of it. Winn-Dixie. I think Winn-Dixie is actually owned by Aldi, which shocked me. I couldn't believe that it was brought in. Winn-Dixie would have been one of the ones that I thought would have been absorbed and turned into maybe a Kroger or something like that. So here's the whole reason why we're doing groceries. So Sandy can say Piggly Wiggly. I'm not kidding. If you ever see a Piggly Wiggly store, just pull in, smile, go in, buy something. There's not much in these stores. These stores in particular are struggling. We have a few in Georgia, and the one that I go to happens to be in Raven County, Georgia, the very northern county, one of the northern counties you get to before North Carolina. And a group of gentlemen actually bought it because they had childhood memories of this particular store and could not let it go. And they've done a really good job. And I will tell you that most people will go into Piggly Wiggly because they're like, ooh, this is like a tourist attraction. So let's go in. And they will come out buying some groceries, but almost everybody will buy a t-shirt or a hat. It's just a weird phenomenon with Piggly Wiggly. I don't know what it is. But
it's kind of like Buc-ee's.
It is.
We just started getting Buc-ee's here in Texas. And to me, it's like it's like the Disneyland of 7-Elevens. They don't have much that 7-Eleven doesn't have. It's just 10 times more of everything.
It's true.
And people come out, they buy the T-shirts and the caps and all that.
They do. And
they
the
probably
cups,
sell more.
the cyber cups that you have and things like that.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that every time I go to Nashville, which I'm going next week, every time I go to Nashville, coming and going, my husband, my mother, and my father-in-law have to stop, whoever's in the car. Me, I could keep going, but they have got to stop. And if we stop, I would say it's probably a minimum 30, 45-minute stop that you're doing. So if you're going to Buc-ee's, plan on that.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So for Clarence Saunders, he is the founder of Piggly Wiggly. But what you guys might not know is he truly is the founder and let's say inventor of the way you shop today. So the reason why I say that is he wanted to have everything self-serve. Before, long time ago, you'd have to give your order to a clerk. The clerk would go and get it, and usually it was typically a male teenager who would go and pull everything and then bring it to the cashier or deliver it, one of the two. And that's how you get your groceries back in the old day. I did ask my mother. My mother said, I've never heard of that. We had to walk 10 miles in the snow to get groceries, so I don't know if that was ever the case. But
well, you know what? Just real quickly, what came to my mind, if you're a TV buff, if you ever watch either the Waltons, or Little House on the Prairie,
they would go to the counter.
They'd go to the counter and they would tell them what they needed, and the clerk would then go pack everything up and bring it to them.
And you wouldn't really get to choose, options or anything.
Yeah, they probably didn't have as much variety.
And so what he wanted to do is Clarence wanted to have it where you could go into a store and you could pick what you want. Now, the reason why I say he's the inventor and founder of the modern supermarket for two reasons. Hold your thought on the first one. The second reason is he kind of had a lane that you went through. So he made sure that the people, the advertisers, the people who actually paid his store more, the distributors, to display bigger, taller, or up front, he made sure that you saw that because you were going kind of through lanes to see your items and pick them up. And this was something he was fascinated with. He was always innovative. The thing that really makes this funny for me is that the success of this idea and Piggly Wiggly encouraged a raft of imitators, including Handy Andy stores, Helpy Selfie stores, Maker Mac stores, and Jitney Jungle. And those are all patented. But you can kind of see this is the picture that he has of where you kind of went through a lane, and you see kind of the fence here. So you could escape, but you basically were crowd. That was the way that he wanted to do that. And moving over to the second one, remember I said, hold that thought, and David told you, almost everybody's, Kroger owns everybody. If we have anybody that researches German names, German places, German people, WikiTree, if we have anybody on the Germany project watching live, or anybody from the Black Forest watching maybe after the fact, his father is from Germany, and we need help. We need to add this gentleman's grandparents. But
and let me real quickly read you the list of who Kroger owns right now.
I mean, I think you'll be amazed.
Kroger owns, and I haven't heard of most of these, but Kroger owns Baker's in Nebraska, City Market, Dillon's, Food for Less, Fred Meyer, Fry's. This is in Missouri. It's Gerbs or Gerbies, Gerbes, Harris Teeter, JC, King Supers, Mariano's, Payless, QFC, Ralph's, Roundy's, Fuller Foods, and Smith's Food and Drug. So if you shop at any of those, you're really shopping at Kroger. And real quickly, Albertsons owns Acme Markets, Hagen, Safeway, Shaw's and Stahl Market, Vaughn's, and Pavilions. So if you shop at any of those stores, you're shopping either at Albertsons or Kroger. The two other The only other stores that are of significance, Whole Foods is owned by Amazon, and then you got Costco, Target, and Walmart, which also owns Sam Club. But everything else is pretty much, now you do have some small independent stores and tiny chains, but
It's amazing.
Almost all of the major stores are now owned by either Kroger or Albertsons.
And they're smart because they want to keep that brand.
Mm-hmm.
And so that people are familiar, because I don't know about everybody, but a grocery store to me has memories. It has memories from a very young child going with my grandmother to even now with my kid or my husband. It has memories. And I will tell you that the men in my family don't really have a preference. My kid will go to Aldi before, or he'll go to anybody else probably, but it's whatever's closest. But for me, I have this familiarity with a grocery store. And if you go into a Kroger in my town, and then I leave my town and go into a Kroger in a different state, and it's not set up the same way, I'm off.
Well, and if you think about it from a kind of a psychological standpoint, the grocery store is where you get your food. That's the most important thing, substance in your life. So you need to trust it. You need to feel comfortable with it. Going somewhere new to buy groceries is
odd.
It takes
you off kilter. But you're making a good point. It's where we buy the food to create those memories that we sit at the table. And this is kind of why we thought about doing this now. We thought about doing this before the holidays come up, the grocers, and it just worked out really well. And we were so surprised. We were just so surprised. Now, I did tell you to hold that thought with Piggly Wiggly, right? So before Piggly Wiggly and Clarence Saunders actually made the first modern kind of more automated grocery store, well, Bernard Kroger actually did it where you did not need the clerks. So he's a little bit before, did not need the clerks, but the clerks still helped you, and they would put the items in the buggy for you as you went along. It was just more, like David said, a Little House on Prairie or the Waltons type of environment. It wasn't a lane that you had to go through. But the big thing that Kroger did is he priced the items. And before that, if you went into a store to get a can of corn or a bag of flour, you were paying whatever it was. You didn't have a choice. There's probably only one store nearby, a small store, and you're going to pay whatever that price was. Well, Kroger put the first price tags on the food that you're buying. And I love these stories coming through. You guys are telling some really, really good stories. And I wanted to do a shout out. Thanks for connecting.
The other major innovation that Mr. Kroger had was the parking lot. Prior to the supermarket, you'd go to the store with your basket and you'd fill up your basket and come home with a day's worth of food. When you open up the supermarket, people couldn't, unless they brought their cars, they could still only carry a day's worth of food. So by creating a parking lot, people could bring their cars and fill up with a week's worth of food or a month's worth of food. And that's what led to the supermarket success. Otherwise, you have this huge store, but nobody can carry this stuff home, so you're not selling anything.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. And this was not planned. I am so glad. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So I was having lunch with my husband, and he said that he gets this thing, this day in history, and he goes, guess what? This day in history, the grocery cart was invented. So I went and fact checked him, and he's wrong. So, but there's a profile up on WikiTree of the guy who created the shopping cart as he went through. And it's pretty cool. And what he did is he put two baskets together with wheel. He has a fascinating story. He is not on David's list because literally I just found it. Let me go and can drop this in here. Read this when you get time. It's a really, really big story that he has where he was also part. If you go to the Wikipedia page, he's also part of the Safeway chain in a roundabout way. And he pretty much lost it all on the big crash and tried to get it back. And did he get it back? from his invention or did he not? I'm going to leave it up to you guys to determine and figure out. So that was good timing. Okay, you guys ready for the first bingo card? Let me bring that up.
I'm ready.
And let me go over to bingo rules because I know that we do have somebody who is new to bingo as well. And while I do that, I'll also bring up the card. Okay, so everybody should have your bingo card ready. What you do is when I call out a word on the bingo card, you use your mouse to click. If you accidentally click in the wrong spot, just click it again and it'll become free. There should be a free space. I do believe it's Piggly Wiggly in the free space. So go ahead and click that now. Okay, and then here's the rules for the bingo. Only one person can win a prize every 6 months within WikiTree's system. So that's bingo, that's thons, that's any prize within 6 months. If it's after 6 months, you are now eligible again. And only one prize per household, please, every 6 months. That allows us to keep it more fair for everybody. The prize is usually a mug. I think there's some other options, but, you know, we have the bingo mug. There's the thon coming up. If you're on a thon team, there's thon team mugs. If you've got a project, there's project mugs. There's all kinds of mugs. If you win, we'll tell you how to claim your prize. Okay, it's open to everybody, not just WikiTreeers. But if you are a WikiTreeer and you win the bingo, please drop your WikiTree ID in the chat for us. There will be 2 games this hour. And I should also mention, when somebody says bingo, whatever you do, do not close down your bingo card yet. Keep it open until we officially have a winner. And how do you know if you won? Well, you can get bingo horizontally, vertically, or diagonally to win. And 5 of you could win at the same time, but it's the first person who types bingo in the chat. That's the one that wins. And like I like to do, I like to tell you all to yell at me. Feel free to go bingo, bingo, bingo. And let me see it real loud so we know if you won or not. Okay. So I know we got some new people. Is everybody set? Does that make sense for everybody? Yep. Do it just like this, like Ann did, because we get to talking about the cool stuff. And sometimes we don't see it again. Whoever types bingo first after getting a valid bingo wins. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. And we're going to go over some of the stores that on the page that we didn't go through. So Sainsbury's, and I think I'm going to need Irish John here. He might be English John for that. This one is, I think, strictly over in England. I don't think it's in Ireland, but maybe it is. And Darren, that one's for you.
Yeah. But she's a bit better now. Oh, no.
Oh, no, now she's really mad. Okay, do we play both games with the same card? Nope, I will give you another card later on. This is just the first game, Margie. So if you've got this card up, you're good.
So,
okay.
Sainsbury's is the second largest chain of supermarkets in the United Kingdom.
Wow. And Alpha Beta?
So Alpha Beta. Now, we have those on the West Coast. I don't know that they're still in existence. But when I was growing up, Alpha Beta was where we shopped, one of the stores. And what was interesting about Alpha Beta, the reason they got their name was because they put all the groceries in alphabetical order for you to find. So
that's interesting. So that's a great concept.
Yeah, I'm not sure how well that would work.
No.
But that was the concept originally.
Cat
this is one I have not heard of. So this would be...
Myers. I think Myers is mostly, isn't it mostly in the Midwest? Do we have any Midwesters here? I've been to, but I can't tell you where I have been to them at.
Somebody in the chat this afternoon posted the name of Myers. So
in Ohio. Okay. I know I used to travel a lot for business, and one of the first things that I would do is go to a grocery store and
Yeah.
pick up some cheese, crackers, and wine.
Yeah, it's in the Midwest, and it's headquartered in Grand Rapids. Serves Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, Wisconsin.
It's a food town. Now, I've been to Food Town, but I can't tell you. It's been a long time. I can't tell you where. I don't know where. So, has anybody been to Food Town? I know I've been there. I want to say it's up towards Ohio too, but I could be wrong.
Well, if there's one in the US, then it's obviously copy the name because that's New Zealand.
New Zealand.
It's not sort of the first supermarket in New Zealand was Freetown, but it's sort of been.
So maybe that's where we got that.
That could be. And then Publix. I'm going to show you the Publix profile. The who started Publix in just a minute. And Publix is kind of when I was in college, it was either Publix or Winn-Dixie down in Florida, and Publix kind of has a cult following there for their meat, their seafood, their produce, and they do a fresh cut fruit bowl like every day. That is pretty addicting. It's pretty amazing. So they're pretty well known as well. And I should give a shout out. I forgot my son works there. I totally forgot that he works in the fish department. Albertsons. And David, I was surprised that you mentioned Albertsons because I know Albertsons turned into, when I was living in Nashville, Albertsons turned into Harris Teeter, and then they turned into Kroger. So it was fascinating to hear.
So what's strange about, the grocery store industry is a very, it is about conglomerates more than about the mom and pop stores like it used to be. And I know here in Dallas, the Albertsons are all closing, but they're replacing them with other stores that are owned by Albertsons. So I don't know if they've just decided the name doesn't work anymore. The image maybe needs to change. But yeah. It looks like we're losing all the Albertsons and getting these new stores, but these new stores are all just Albertsons under a different name. So it's a strange little thing going on there.
I think it's a little, I did ask some Germans, and I did ask the people at our local store, and the stockers at our local store pronounce it two ways, Lidl and Little. So I'm not sure, but I will tell you that it's similar to Aldi but bigger. It's got a better bakery. It's got something.
I think that's the same. Most of the same letters as Aldi.
It does, and it looks very similar as well. And so Flo from the Germany project did create this profile for us. Like Darren created one for New Zealand we're going to look at. Flo did create this one, and there's a bit of trivia with it. So the guy who created it, and I want to say his name is Anton. I'm going to say Lytle. I hope that's right. Anton Lytle. Little. I think John Tyner just told us right. Okay.
Little. Yeah.
Little. Thank you, John. So it went through several different owners and different types of managements, and Anton was there originally with a brother and then in-laws, and it went through so many different variations that by the time the last person that owned it, they could no longer call it that because no living person still owned that company. So we'll have to look at the profile to see what the trivia is with this one. But this is one of those profiles that changes information so much with his business that you just got to sit there and read it and kind of comprehend it and take it in. And thanks, John. So we're gonna go with Little. Okay. And I think I like Little better than Aldi. Now I'm gonna have a hard time saying this too, but our Aldi is cleaner. I gotta go. I mean, you can't go to a dirty grocery store, right? Roundy's.
I've not heard of Roundy's.
So
but Roundy's is in Illinois and Wisconsin, and it's a Kroger brand.
That's funny. It's a Kroger brand. Tesco, and this came to us from Irish John. He sent this one in, and I believe, John, this is where you shop regularly.
Yeah.
Give him a second to pop in. We always
Well,
have a little bit of delay.
One of the few so far that I actually heard of.
Really?
None of the American stores I've heard of so far.
Really?
Yeah. But I've heard of Tesco.
And there's Roundy's was in Wisconsin. Okay, and I'm going to keep going. We used to, but not so much now because we have an Aldi closer to home. There you go. Aldi is becoming more popular every year. And a Walmart. I mean, I asked Darren, one of the first questions I asked him before we started, Darren, do you have a Walmart? And he said,
no, not yet.
I was shocked. I was really, really shocked. So no one, and I would say Walmart's was probably pretty innovative. I know a lot of grocery stores. When I grew up, like I said, we had Giant Superfood. Now it's just called Giant, I think. But they had clothes on one side. And some Krogers, like the Kroger in my mom's town in Tennessee, has clothes. It has a jewelry counter. It has all kinds of weird things in it. And Walmart kind of made that popular. Other stores, grocery stores tried to, but Walmart kind of made it popular.
Okay, so in 1985, I believe, I lived up in Humboldt County, California, and they put a Walmart in, and it was such a big deal that they closed everything in town for the day.
Oh, my.
They had it declared at Walmart Day, and they had a parade and everything because we were finally getting a Walmart.
And now they're everywhere.
It was a big deal back then.
Now they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Lucky.
Now, we used to shop at Lucky in Southern California. We used to have Lucky's. Again, I think they're defunct now.
It's got to be tough having a grocery store. And, as we probably all experienced during the COVID when grocery stores were closed down, we had one neighbor, bless his heart, who was over 65, and our local stores had, if you're over 65 or older, you could get in an hour early before everybody. Right. And bless his heart, he would buy toilet paper for the neighborhood. He was the only one in our small neighborhood. And he would always say, who wants it? And he was, as soon as he got home, it was gone. There's a Lucky's in Arizona too.
Okay. Back in the 80s.
Yeah. I can't believe nobody has got bingo yet. But everybody's having pretty fun with this. Heb. Now Heb is this in Texas?
I think it's just pronounced H-E-B.
Is it? Okay.
And it is in Texas, but it's not up in Dallas yet. We're just now getting word that we're getting a few H-E-Bs. But we don't have, at least up my way of Dallas, we don't have any. I've never seen one. But
and the founder was a female, I think, right? Florence.
Let me see.
Florence could be, I guess, a man's name too. But
no, I think it was a female, and I think Florence Butt, B-U-T-T. She opened up a grocery store, and then her son took over. Howard Butt took over during World War I, and expanded it into one of the biggest. HEB stands for Howard E. Butt.
Okay, I was gonna wonder. Okay, yeah. I guess Butt's grocery store would not sell as Butt.
Everybody's getting bingo, but no one can win.
I know.
It is HEB is the largest privately held company and largest private employer in Texas.
Wow.
So it's big, but we don't have them my way.
And there's something else to mention for those that you don't know, like Kroger. And now I understand after David gave that there we go, Lisa. You want
on Lisa.
Don't say that is just fabulous. You want on Piggly Wiggly. It's awesome. What is Lisa? what you need to do is email Awen, and she will get you all the information you need to get your prize. Just let her know that you won. And she knows Piggly Wiggly because we have talked about it a lot this week. So just tell her you won on Piggly Wiggly bingo, and she'll know what that means. But when David mentioned that Kroger had bought out some of the other stores, now it makes sense, because if you happen to go to Kroger's Wikipedia page, they own dairies, they own food factories for pet food and for cereals and things like that. They own bakeries, and they own some farms as well. And now they're located throughout the country strategically, so you can have easy distribution. But that makes sense now that I know that how
And
much.
you know, it used to be that store brands were not as good as the other brand name stuff, but you go to Kroger, their quality of their store brand food is pretty good, and I think it is because they have all their own dairies and bakeries and all those things themselves. So
that's a good question. So when you're at a grocery store, do you mostly buy name brand or store brand? So what's everybody doing? What about you guys?
my family hates when I buy store brand, but I do buy store brand when I can. You know, I think I'm all about saving money, and if it's just as good or good enough, then I buy the store brand.
I like this, Steven.
You recall a period in time, I don't know if this was nationwide or just what we had in California, where generic food was all in a white wrapper with a big blue where it just said bread, or a white can of beer that just said beer on it. That's what generic was when I was a kid.
And this is me too. It also depends on a sale. Like that's why I go to Publix.
Yeah.
They got the buy one get ones and things like that. So it does. It's really interesting. Most of you are saying that store brand, but it also depends on the item.
It does depend, yeah.
So that's kind of a fun question too. Okay, let me bring up. I did drop the second bingo card in the chat, so go ahead and pick that up now. A lot of you were mentioning one of my, I think, extreme earliest childhood memories, like literally like my first or second one, and that would be the A&P store. So this gentleman, he's not technically the founder. We do have the founder linked in here as well, but he's the one that brought A&P to national prominence. I love this profile. It's really well done as well with information. I love the ad. The A&P ad. Now, the reason why A&P is so big to my family, I don't know. It was on East Coast. David, did you have it on the West Coast? No.
Nope, I've never been to an A&P.
So the reason why it was so big is because at the end of every counter was this old-time coffee grinder. They did get electric ones eventually, but this old-time wooden coffee grinder. So you would buy your bag of coffee, and then after you checked out, they would sit there and they would grind it, and it's in a red bag, and it's the A&P coffee. And now with the Keurig machines coming out, they finally came out with the little A&P things, and I thought that my family would just go crazy insane and that would be all they would buy is that. The other thing, I'm curious to see if Darren had this. I'm curious to see if David had this on the West Coast because I'm positive you had to, and I'm curious to see how many of you remember. And Anne kind of mentioned it. It's the A&P stamps, but it's actually the S&H stamps. They were green. If you went, we got them through the A&P store, and you had a booklet, and they were green with the red ink. You had
we had blue chip stamps, and you get them when you bought your groceries. You get your stamps. You put them in a booklet, and when you got enough, you could go down to the blue chip stamp store and turn them in for something. I don't know. I was too young to really.
I don't remember, but it was, and thank you, Coulter. It was S&H green stamps.
Green stamps and blue chip stamps.
I just remember those, and Can somebody please tell us why our grandparents or everybody collected those? Because I know they were a collection. I assume once you filled out a book, you turned it in and it went towards your grocery bill at the time. I'm not sure what it was about, but I remember my grandmother did not leave that store until she got her stamps.
I can't recall anything like that in New Zealand.
You didn't have anything like that, a stamp book or anything from and it was only a grocery store.
Yeah, I can't remember anything, but doesn't mean that it didn't happen.
Yeah, it says they were popular in the United States from 1896 until the 1980s.
Oh, here we go. And you got dishes or silverware with it. And I guess that's where Quilter said that she got an awesome set of Pyrex baking dishes for it. You could turn it in for books or gifts.
Yeah, there was a catalog, and when you got enough, you could turn it in for products from a catalog. But I think we actually had a store, the Blue Chip Stamp store, that you could go down to and pick out your gift or prize, whatever.
That's pretty
cool. So here it was. So they also had competitors were greenback stamps, which was from Piggly Wiggly. Triple S stamps, gold bond stamps, blue chip stamps, plaid stamps. Depends on the I guess they were offered by different stores. So depending on what stores you shopped at.
And that goes to the regional that you were talking about at the beginning of the thing. So I would really be curious to see, is this just an American phenomenon? But this was the A&P store, and I can tell you, I remember when the last A&P, or the A&P that my grandmother used to use most frequently in Maryland, closed down. I really thought she was going to, cry for days and weeks. This was something familiar to her. She knew the clerks. The clerks knew her. This was her store.
When in the early 2000s, my grandmother had an avocado tree that used to rain avocados like crazy. We couldn't even, we'd have to throw away hundreds of avocados every year. And one year I stopped by her house, she had a box of them. And she asked me if I would take them down to the guy at the grocery store, because she was so familiar with the old days when you knew everybody.
Yeah.
And you could just show up with avocados and give them to the store to sell. Nowadays they'd look at you like you were crazy. But yeah, that's what they used to do with them, is just take them to the grocery store and let them sell them.
And this one, just going to go through real quick. Again, I dropped the link for the bingo card number 2. This would be the founder of Publix. And the reason why I thought this was interesting is he was born in Warm Springs, Georgia. The common thing there is, if you remember, that FDR had I'll call it a resort. It wasn't really that, but for polio in Warm Springs, Georgia. If you're ever near there is the little White House, and they talk about that. You can tour it. It's really a fascinating little town. It does have a Piggly Wiggly, I might add. And the reason why I know that is because I've been there many times. But this gentleman worked there. He worked at the same one that I would go visit, probably updated a lot more since then. Moved to Florida with his family and was working, and the business went bust. So what did he do? He said, I turned in my apron, took the money I had saved to buy a new car, which was about $1,300. And in 1930, I opened my own store next to the one I left. And look where Publix is today. I mean, that's just a pretty amazing story.
Yeah.
And he could use a little help with this CC7. That's only $400. So if you happen to be a shopper from Publix, then that would be where you want to go.
And you have to wonder what somebody like Mr. Kroger or Mr. Albertson would think today if they saw where their little market had grown.
I thought you were going to say they think today that they're on WikiTree bingo.
And they're on WikiTree. That's how famous they become. And also, they, you mentioned this on one of the previous ones, a lot of these companies were founded by an individual who didn't necessarily, who ultimately brought in somebody else who turned it into the mega store. They these were little mom and pop markets that got turned into major grocery stores and then eventually conglomerates. But the individuals that did that, very much like the McDonald's, where you've got, is it Ray Kroc that was the genius behind that? But the McDonald's brothers didn't turn it into the McDonald's we know today. They just started it out. But
there's a documentary you guys should really watch. See, I was going to say a word, David, but it would be inappropriate what happened to the McDonald's brothers.
Yeah, but you'll find out with a lot of these people that they had no idea, is that they just opened up a little market to sell groceries, like you just mentioned with Publix, and then somebody else, eventually a corporation, comes in and
what's funny about that too is, I swear to you, this was not planned, but perfect timing, because we're saying this is little, and so this is one that Germany Project sent in to us. That this was exactly as David just kind of said, a smaller mom and pop that was started. This is a very interesting read. Flo went through this and he documented the changes of the business each time. It is a lot of work that he did to kind of keep this together, because I got kind of lost a little bit through it. So this is where I said at the end, it says, for legal reasons, the guy who ended up owning it, and so probably because there was nobody with the name in the company anymore, Dieter Schwartz could not use the name Little. Therefore, he bought the name from teacher and painter Ludwig for about 1,000 marks. So it'd gone through, and this is one of those ones where you really just have to read the profile, because it goes through all these changes where Anton, the original founder, tried to keep it, and it went through all these changes. Gets this guy, and he has a little bit of issue with trademark, because last name, his name is Dieter Schwartz. So he paid a painter and a teacher 1,000 marks. And I guarantee you that painter teacher was probably thrilled with that. And then now looking back, as David said, they're like, wait a second. And I agree, Mel, I'm hungry too. Okay, we've got one more before we talk about the next bingo card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause. We're going to go through the next bingo card really quick, and then we're going to come back. And Darren's going to share with us a really cool story. It really touched me, and I'm glad that he's able to.
Can I throw one in real quickly? I
did this, absolutely.
If you're on the West Coast and you know Safeway supermarkets, huge on the West, including here in Texas.
They're in the East Coast too.
Are they? Okay. Yeah. I don't know how far they go, but I know they're big out here. Safeway. Most of these stores are named after their owners: Albertsons, Kroger, Ralph's, etc. I was curious about Safeway, because that's obviously, it wasn't a Mr. Safeway, I would think. Safeway, during the Depression, the owner was to open up a grocery store. In those times, you could come in and put it on your tab. People didn't have the money to pay, so it was basically credit. You'd add a line of credit, and eventually you'd have to settle up, but you could take the groceries now and pay later. That got a lot of people in a lot of trouble because they couldn't pay later. And now all they owe all this money, just like we do today with credit cards. You think you can pay it within the year, and then you get bogged down. He opened up Safeway. Safeway did not take credit cards. You had to pay cash. That was the safe way to buy groceries, so that you didn't get into debt. I thought that was just a really cool story. But yeah, there was no credit, cash only. And that way you didn't risk getting into debt over your food.
I agree. That would be the safe way.
Safe way to shop.
And I think it was the Skaggs that created the founder, and they ended up merging with somebody else, and that's how Safeway also became named.
Yeah, there were two stores that merged.
Yeah.
There was a Skagg was a family that kind of started it. They bought up this is an example we were just talking about. Safeway was a tiny little store. I think they had 5 stores. And then this guy with many more stores bought it and took the Safeway name. And
then they, if I remember correctly, the Skag said that he felt the company was so strong it would live on, and he felt that it didn't need his name on it.
Right, he didn't want to name it after himself because
Yeah.
he didn't feel that it was appropriate that after he was gone that the store be named after him.
I thought that was kind of cool. You don't hear that because as we're talking about Kroger, you see that. Okay, this is going to be a really fast one, guys. So again, same rules. There should be a grocery cart, I believe, in the free space page. Go ahead and click that now. We're not going to talk too much about these coming up. These are ones that we still need to add to the page as well, but there's some that are more global. You might recognize them. So Waitrose is going to be the first one. And remember, to get bingo, you need to get it horizontal, vertical, or diagonal. The first person who does get a legitimate bingo and yells it at us in the chat is the winner of the prize. And Bueller's. And I thought Bueller's was, maybe not. I thought Bueller's was in Germany, but I could be wrong. I could be just going by the name. So and this is not Coop, it's Co-op. So my apologies for not putting a dash. Oh, Ohio? Bueller's is in Ohio.
Yeah, Ohio. Bueller's is in Ohio.
I'm thinking, Chris, you go to all the ones that are up there. And some people do. Some people shop. Who has the best deals that week?
Yeah, I know people that go to multiple stores. On a Saturday, they make 3 trips or 3 stops.
Okay, then moving along, Kohl's.
Yeah, Australia.
We have a Kohl's with a K, but they don't sell groceries.
There are a lot of the grocery stores that are in New Zealand, also in Australia, and vice versa. Should be asking you and Mel this.
Some are, some aren't.
I can see for distribution, that would make more sense. Metro Cash and Carry. And this kind of reminds me of your Safeway.
It's interesting that Cash and Carry, you kind of can, you wonder where the names come from, and you got, you pay cash, you carry groceries, I guess. I don't know. But we have a store out here called Smart and Final. And I looked it up, and it was named after Mr. Smart and Mr. Final. They were partners, yeah.
That's hilarious.
But I was wondering, because Smart and Final, I'm trying to think, what does that have to do with groceries? Just Smart and Final. It doesn't mean anything, really.
Doesn't mean there's no takesy backsies. There's no return. They're smart. They're not bringing any money back. And while we're going through this and you click, if you guys have time, how often do you go to a grocery store? Do you go once a week or more or less? I would tell you my husband, he goes every other day.
And how many people go into their grocery stores anymore? I don't go in anymore. I order mine all online, and I just pick it up once a week.
I try to do that.
I go in for special things and the fruits and vegetables stuff I want to pick out. But
and houses, if you have not been to one of these, be there on a Friday. They will do a crab boil specifically and specially for you in the parking lot, and that's every Friday. They are in I know I've been to them in Biloxi, and I've been to them in right outside of inside of New Orleans. A Market Basket.
So we used to have Market Basket when I was a little kid, and in fact my grandfather's best friend owned several of the local Market Baskets in our area. But they disappeared decades ago.
Oh, you won't believe this, David. So my grandpa was a warehouse manager for Smart and Final.
Oh, for Smart and Final, yeah.
And then, so 2 times a week, sometimes 3 for the grocery store. I go whenever I feel need to get out of the house. That's true, too, for me. And the grocery store is where I'm going to head. I don't need new shoes. I don't need new clothes. So I typically will do that. I don't place an order and have it delivered for free.
Well, we used to have, when I moved to Texas from California, we did not have super Walmarts. We didn't really have even Walmarts as popular as they are now. But the first time I went to Walmart to buy hot dogs and shoes, it was the strangest thing to buy them both at the same place.
Buy them both at the same time.
Yeah.
And Wegmans, if you have been to a Wegmans, then you know as well. Wegmans has like a cult following. They are well known. They just started moving into Maryland when I kind of was moving out of Maryland. So they're amazing as well. They mostly, I believe, are on the Midwest and East Coast. Caprabo. Oh, we got a bingo. Yeah, I think the bingo was on Wegmans. So congratulations, Deb. Let me tell you how to claim your prize. What you're going to do is email Awen at wikitree.com. Tell her that you won one of the bingos, and she will get the information to you on how to claim your prize, what the prizes are as well, and be able to hook you up with that prize. Congratulations, and thanks for joining us playing. Okay, so
real quickly, for those that don't know, how did we say it? Caprabo. That's Spain and Andorra.
Ah, so that really is.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I'm just going to drop the WikiTree store in the chat. For those of you that won, look at the mugs that are in the store, because that's pretty much what Awen's going to send you as well. And for those of you that are signing up for the thon in about a month, look at the mugs and bring your mugs. Thank you, Deb, for dropping your WikiTree ID, especially since the names are different. That really helps me out. I appreciate it. Okay, so we've got one more that we want to go over, and this is one that Darren sent in. And I can tell you, when Darren sent this in, there wasn't much to it. And I said, okay, Darren, we could really use a bio, though. And came back later that day, and it has a biography. But why is this one important to you?
Well,
send this one in. So tell us who it is and why it's important to you.
Well, it's Thomas Henry Archie. He found Food Town in New Zealand, so that was the first supermarket in got blanked on the date of 1958 or something. What did I put?
He was born.
Yeah, 1958.
Wait,
so
there we go.
First supermarket, and then he sort of got together with another guy and started a company called Progressive Enterprises, and they diversified and went into fast food, which a place called Georgia Pie, and that's my memory. Is like my nana used to.
I think this is a fascinating story and fascinating picture, because this is pretty much an immigrant, right, to New Zealand that came in, because he said that he went back to Canton.
He the second generation New Zealander, so it's pretty sure his dad was born in New Zealand, but his grandfather came from China.
And then he started to he created this business, and he started, as David had mentioned, this is a small store.
Yeah, so his grandfather started sort of like walking around Auckland with a basket of food, and then his father and his uncle had another store, like a small store, and then he ended up having to take over the store when his father died, and he noticed, in America, like, you're getting people coming in with cars, and the site he had no car parks, so he got a site in Otahu, Otara, and he managed to sell out of all his stock on opening day by 11 a.m.
Hey, that's amazing.
Yeah, and
he's the founder of, because we talked about McDonald's, right? So McDonald's refused him a franchise.
Yeah. So him and another guy, Brian.
Right.
Brian, was it?
Let's see.
What did I put?
Yeah, I have it on the Wikipedia page. I'm sorry. The one thing the Wikipedia page does not show, though, is what these pies look like. So, to me, they look like a little. Darren, have you heard of pot pies? Is that term? That's what they look like to me. They're like a little crusted. They're crusted all the way around. These Georgie pies, right?
Yeah, they're square. Square pies. Great taste, but yeah. My nan used to live in New Lynn, and the first Georgie pie was in Kelston. So we used to go up there every so often, and like it wasn't built with a drive-through when it was started, so they jury-rigged a conveyor belt going around the outside of the store from where the counter was to where the drive-through bit was out the back, and you could sit outside and just watch the food going on the tray.
And how old were you? Because you went with your grandma, so how old were you when?
I would have been less than 10.
And then these are gone. They're no more.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So sort of in 1996, that store got demolished, and the supermarket that was in the small was got changed, and it became a Countdown, and I started working there, and they built in a new store for the Georgie pie sort of in the mall area, but it never opened as a Georgie pie. It opened as a McDonald's because McDonald's bought Georgie pie for the locations.
Can you believe that? And that was what was so funny. He was denied a McDonald's, and then ended up that Georgie pie became a business, and then McDonald's, I guess they didn't like the competition after that.
Yeah. And then so 1996, no more Georgie pies, and then McDonald's did bring back Georgie pie, like the pies, for about 6 years or so. But we don't have Georgie pies anymore.
That just seems crazy that something's so popular and so good and you don't have it. So if anybody's watching in New Zealand or wants to start it in America, because that sounds like it'd be a good seller, then you could do that. Now, the next two? Now, Ann only wants the next two bingos. I know for sure what the next bingo is, and we have the hint as it would be a noble idea. So that would be the next one. And that would be for historical bingos. As you guys know, we have an earlier bingo in the day that's on Space Pages that involves you bringing your space page here. And the next one after that, okay. So Dave and I kind of came. I mentioned something very briefly to David for the November one, and he took the idea and just went with it really well. So the October one is the hint is it would be a noble idea, and then the November one would be it's all in the name. And I guarantee you that those two you don't want to miss because the trivia is awesome with those two. They're really, really good. So I think that will do it. Darren, thanks so much for joining us and hanging out today.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for doing that profile. You did a great job on that profile. I want to thank the other country projects. Thank you so much for sending in your representatives for grocers. This has been a fun one for me. And yes, I'm going to say it one more time. If you go anywhere near Piggly Wiggly, stop in. Trust me.
And can I make one last point that we didn't get to here? But this is fun trivia and all interesting and all that. But if you're doing your family history, we talk about the fan club and doing your neighbors and friends, etc. But don't forget about things like where did my ancestors buy their groceries? And if you want to learn more about that, Google these founders. Google Mr. Ralph's or Mr. Albertson's. You'll learn all about how they innovated and what was available and wasn't available at certain times. So not only would your ancestor shopped at Ralph's, but find out what Ralph's was at the time, your ancestors, because it's not the same as it is today. And also, if you don't know if they had Ralph's or whatever in your area, go to the city directories, find out what the local stores were, and then research. You can do that with churches, with schools. I've done that with, my grandfather's high school. I Googled it and found out that they transferred the students from 9th grade over to the high school from the junior high and all that. Well, I wouldn't have normally known that, but that was a big deal at the time. So Google these places kind of like you do your fan club, and you can learn a lot about your ancestors' lives indirectly.
And add that to their profiles.
And add it to their profiles.
If you have that memory, I saw a lot of you have memories today with the grocery store. At the very bottom before the comments section, there's a little section most people forget. It's called memories. Add that.
Yep.
Okay, guys, we will see you next month. Thanks for joining us, and congratulations to winners. Bye.
Bye.